Hello, my name is John. This video is going to be all about light and capturing great light in your photographs. I think something that happens to people in the early parts of their photographic journey is they hear that they need to focus on light or capturing good light or great light, but it's kind of confusing what exactly that means or how to do it. So in this video, I want to kind of dispel that and help you really improve your photographic compositions with really good light. This is actually part of a series. This is the third video in the series on photography composition. So if you want to go back and watch those in order, go down to the description and you can do that. If you don't care, that's fine. Just continue on with this video. All right, so let's just get right into it. Light. Light is tricky, so let me try and explain it in a way that hopefully will be really clear to you. I want you to watch this video clip here a second, and I want you to tell me what you see, or at least think to yourself. I guess you can't communicate with me directly, but think to yourself, what am I looking at in this frame, okay? All right, so you did that. Probably you're kind of confused. What am I talking about here? Let's look at it again real quick. Okay, so now you can see it's a video of a camera. So why is that obvious in the second clip, but not clear in the first clip? It's because obviously there's light in the second clip. The reason you can't see anything in the first clip is because there's no light. And I know this sounds obvious, but stick with me for a minute. When you're first learning to take photos, it is your natural inclination to see objects out in the world and then to take photographs of objects, a face, a sunset, a flower, a car, a person, things like that. But what you're really doing is capturing reflections of light off of objects. You've never actually seen an object in your entire life. I know that sounds weird, but that first clip demonstrates that. There's no light, and so you can't actually see anything. Once you have light reflecting off of a surface of anything, your eyes interpret that, your brain interprets it, and now you have something to look at. And so this is important because in the beginning, you'll be looking for things in the world that are interesting, but you don't need to be looking for things that are interesting. You need to be looking for light that is interesting. And so forget a little bit about the subject or the context of the photo and focus more on what light is doing against those objects. And we're going to get into a bunch of examples about that shortly, but I want you to start thinking about that. And the most important thing is to start seeing it, which I'm going to show you a little bit of how to do here coming up. So in my first example here, what this is a photo of is some ships that I was walking by, some boats, some fishing boats, and the lighting in the scene is good, but I want you to take note of the color. So color is something we sort of associate with objects. One boat is yellow, another boat is red. That's actually not true. The light coming off of those boats is yellow and red as interpreted by your eyes and your brain. And part of the reason I took this photograph is because I saw these yellow tones in the rust and in these yellow paint marks or plastic, whatever they are, on the docks here, and then also on the boats. And all of those things started to tie together a little bit, and it gave me a feeling of cohesion with the photograph. Also, the colors coming off of the boats and off of the dock and off of the water were really pleasing. The sun is getting low in the sky. And so I didn't care that much about taking a photograph of some fishing boats. Not particularly interested in fishing boats, but the light coming off of the boats and off of the water was really interesting. So that's the first example I kind of want to look at. Color is a big thing with light. So be looking for color, be looking for colorful light, warm light, cool light, whatever grabs your attention and grabs your eye. The next examples I want to go over here are the difference between hard and soft light. So in the photo on the right, we have very hard and direct light on the kind of the secondary subject, my friend sitting in a chair, and very hard light hitting the fire bin here with this like kind of beam right down the center as the sun is low in the sky and directly hitting the side of the stainless steel can. And then on the left, we have more soft light. You can see that, let me get my pen working here. I never prepare this before I start. I really should probably do that. Okay, you can see that around his body is all this light, and it's really, really soft light because the sun is sort of blocked behind these clouds, and it's just kind of wrapping around his body, and that really is describing and showing his features really well. And soft light is something you especially want to look for when you're taking pictures of people, because it tends to be more flattering, and you'll often hear that about portraits. The soft light makes for great portraits. It's not a rule. You don't always have to do that. The light on my face right now is kind of hard. In fact, I could use another light, a fill light over here, to soften the general diffusion of this whole scene, but we won't get into that right now. But just know that there's a difference between hard light and soft light, direct light and more diffused light that's traveling through clouds or traveling through some kind of filter that is causing it to bounce around, and generally that is more pleasing to the eye when it comes to people's skin tones and stuff like that. So that's something you just want to have your eye out for and be looking for. So don't just try and go and take a picture of a person. Look at the person in the context of where they are and see if you can move them around to get the light to be a little bit more pleasing. These are both examples of shooting in what's called golden hour in the evening. I shoot probably 80% of my photography in the evenings. I don't like getting up for sunrise. And I just love the way that the light looks in the evening. And it's just kind of become a thing of mine, I guess. Let's look at the next one. So another thing to look at is the angle of the light, which I guess ties into the evening bit. When the sun is low, it sort of casts really interesting lighting effects on objects and people. So in this case, I have my two friends standing on the beach. I didn't take this photo of them because I wasn't really all that interested in what they were doing. I took it because I saw some light on the edge of their clothing that I thought was interesting. So you can see the outline here and here is all of this sort of golden light that's hitting the side of them. And it really makes them stand out from the photo. It kind of describes their features a little bit. And also the colors, it makes the colors more pleasing, I think, a little bit as well. There's some other problems with this photograph, like we have some kind of crossover here. You can't really see his foot, and there's a dog in the background, but hey, you can't have it all, right? So that's something to look for, is the angle of light. Light that is high overhead can often be very harsh and cast sort of weird shadows on people. Light that is lower tends to be a little bit more flattering and sometimes more interesting on the sides of trees or buildings. If you go out to a forest, especially if you're going to take like landscape photos, if the sun is high in the sky, it will wash out all of the colors and all of the interest in the trees and the rocks and everything. Give it some time, wait until the evening, and you'll suddenly notice that the forest is just popping. It's just alive with color and with shadow and with tone. That isn't to say you can't take photos at other times of the day, but the angle of your light is definitely important. All right, let's look at another one here. So one thing I also think is worth understanding, oops, move my pen here, there we go. Another thing I think is also worth understanding is that light describes a subject, whether that's a person or a thing or a place, a building, a river, whatever. Just like a story that you read, if it's described in a certain way, it makes it more interesting. Light does the same thing to objects, is it describes them, and the way that it hits them and describes the object is kind of what makes it interesting and pleasing to the eye. Here's an example of the thumbnail of this video, and the light is only describing or showing one side of my face. And so I think that makes it a little bit interesting, because you normally in life see sort of everything, a whole face. You don't often see just a part of one. You also kind of wonder what's in the background because the light isn't describing anything about the background. So it helps also to think of it as a description. All right, so let's take a minute to talk about how you actually do this, how you implement it. And the first thing I want to bring up related to this is this. Practice. You're not going to walk out tomorrow and start taking amazing photographs. That's not how it works. It's repetition over repetition. You're going to have a lot of sessions where you go out to take photos and you come back with nothing that you really like. But once in a while, you'll get something good, and that will be a really good learning experience for you. No photographic expedition, in my opinion, is wasted, because you always, I think, generally learn something. But practice is the key. So be patient with yourself. You're going to get it over time. It's going to be fine. So number 2. So most of my photography is outdoors, but something I do for this channel is I'll take video and photographs of like camera lenses and cameras and things. I do that indoors for the most part, and I do that with lights in my office here. So one thing you can do is go and buy a light. It doesn't have to be expensive. The light I'm using here is a $15 lamp from Amazon. And use that on a desk with some objects, a plant, any still life object you think is interesting. Fruit is like a common one. People do that for painting and stuff. Pick something, some object of interest, put it on a table and buy a light and start working with moving the light around and taking photographs of the object. This is great because it allows you to get a bunch of repetitions and a bunch of practice in a controlled environment where you can control the light, control the subject, and it will help teach you a lot about what light does and how it works. And you can get a big softbox for a soft light, or you can buy a small light for hard light. It's just a really good way to learn. And if you go outside and try and work with light, sometimes it's a little bit tricky because you don't have control of the environment, of the people, of the buildings, of the things, and the weather is not always cooperating. So try something in your house or whatever. It'd be a lot easier for you. Number 3. Evening and morning. Go out there in the evening and in the mornings and look at that golden light. Look at that where the sun is low on the horizon, and don't focus as much on the subject. So you're not going out necessarily to go and take some great photographs or capture some really cool subjects. In fact, I would encourage you even to just try and take photos of interesting lighting conditions, of reflections that are coming off of the sides of buildings or trees or rocks or whatever you see. Capture light, forget about the subject a little bit. Sometimes if you work on these things in isolation, it kind of helps make it a little bit simpler. And then over time, you can kind of put it all together. But be out and be looking at those conditions because it will start to train your eye. And that is point number 4. Learn to see. I don't know where this first came from or where I first came across it, but something commonly discussed in art, like painting and drawing, is that you're not so much learning to use your hand to manipulate a pencil or a paintbrush, but you're using your eye and you're learning to see. And the same is true for, I think, for all visual arts and photography especially. It's not so much that you're learning to use your camera to take a photograph. The technical parts are pretty easy to learn. You're learning to see things that are worth photographing. And that's, I think, the big distinction. You want to be looking around and training your eye to notice, as we said earlier, interesting lighting conditions, like some of the ones I had in those photos earlier. And the last one, pardon my terrible handwriting, should have been a doctor, as they say, is weather. So go out in all kinds of weather conditions, because the more interesting the weather is, usually the more interesting the light is. Sometimes it'll be overcast and the light will be super soft. It's like a giant soft box in the sky, great for portraits. You'll have storms that produce really interesting light on landscapes or on people or on surfaces of all kinds. Sunny days can be good. They can be bad. It kind of depends. You just got to play with the light and figure out what's going to work for you. But observe the weather. Get used to looking at the weather and get used to pursuing different kinds of weather conditions, because that's always going to yield different kinds of and interesting photographs. Okay, I hope that was helpful. If you're still here, my goodness, you should probably subscribe because you made it through the whole video and there's plenty more where this came from. That's about it. Hope to see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.